Many of you know that I worked as a therapist for 15 years. And I talked to a lot of people who felt like failures. When we dug into that feeling, it seemed like anything less than world domination felt like a failure to some people. There were students who said they'd failed their exams, and it turned out, they got a B. And a lot of people felt like they were disappointments to their mom and dad, or the people that raised them. What did they want from you? I asked. Well, I guess they just wanted me to be perfect. But then when I would ask parents, what do you want from your kids? They would say, I just want them to be happy. There's disconnect. Most of us are way more critical of ourselves than almost anyone else is of us. We have an ugly little voice inside that says, stupid, idiot, clumsy, whatever. Things we say to ourselves, we would be reported if we talked to anybody else that way. But it's the mistakes that we make for some of us that glare at us when we look back or look around at our lives. We forgot to say something right, or we said something wrong, or we forgot to do something, or we did something that caused damage, or we didn't plan properly, or we didn't know something that we felt like we should know, but looking back, we couldn't have known, but we should have known anyway, so we feel like an idiot. We have damages we've done and businesses we've started that didn't make it, and times that we made mistakes in relationships, and times that we yelled at our children when we had resolved not to. I was not a big yeller. In fact, I was a fabulous mother, but there was this one time when my oldest child, he was about, 14 months old maybe, and he was a squealer. He would squeal when he was happy. He could clear a whole restaurant. And he liked to smack. I don't know, there was just a face. He would smack and just pat hard. And finally, I was just tired one day, and I'd had a long day at work, and, blah, blah, blah. And he was sitting right above me on a chair, and I was sitting on the floor, and we were playing, and he squealed right in my ear and smacked my head. And I turned around, and I screamed, "We do not scream, and we do not hit." The irony was apparent immediately. Parenthood is a minefield of mistakes just waiting to happen, and ones that you think you might make, and ones that you did make but you didn't notice. And speaking of all that, happy Mother's Day. And you really try, and you secretly suspect that you're going to do damage to your children without even knowing it, or that you did it already while they were still inside you, or that everything they do is your fault if it's bad, and that you should have known about all the things that they did that they now tell you now that they're in their 20s, that you didn't know at the time, even though they did everything they could to keep it from you for your own protection and peace of mind. But now we can tell you. And so I'm going to tell you in a couple of sentences how to be a good mother and a father. You ready? Here it is. They watch what you do. They don't listen to what you say. I mean, they do, but they more watch what you do. And so just be the kind of person you want them to be. You want them to be polite? Be polite to them. You want them to learn please and thank you? Say please and thank you to them. You want them to be honest and trustworthy and energetic and useful in the world? Model that. If you find yourself in a situation that's confusing, sometimes it's clarifying to say, what would I want my children to do if they were in a situation such as this? That's actually why I got a divorce from their dad. I thought, if they are in marriages that are like this, what would I want them to do? I know. Back to my therapy office. I had a cartoon on the wall. I'm not a big cartoon person, but this cartoon was of Glinda the Good Witch at her therapist's office. And she was lying on the couch, and her therapist was there taking notes. And she said, one wants a heart and one wants a brain, and it's just too much. And underneath the caption is, Glinda learns to be the good enough witch. Some of us will go to great lengths to avoid making a mistake. Some of us will even avoid trying new things that we don't already know how to do, because sometimes we feel like we should already know how to do them, even though we never learned them. Those are mostly firstborn and only children that feel like that. Some of us grew up with people who would say things like, I'm never wrong, except that one time in 1995 when I thought I was wrong, but I wasn't. My family joked that on my grandfather's headstone should be, often in error, never in doubt. Sometimes we make the same mistakes over and over again, knowing they're mistakes, knowing that it didn't work last time, it didn't work the time before that, it didn't work the time before that, but we're going to try it just one more time because this is a familiar mistake, and the situation it gets you into is kind of odd but familiar, and it might be too scary to do something different. But the world's best wisdom tells us that mistakes are part of learning. Thomas Edison said, I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that don't work. Danish Nobel Prize winner Niels Bohr says, an expert is a person who has made all the mistakes that can be made in a very narrow field. The drive to avoid mistakes can lead to a certain kind of success. In certain fields, not ever making a mistake is a good thing. For example, 21 out of the first 23 NASA astronauts were firstborn children. 21 out of 23. Because you have to just be perfect and short enough. Because it's a small place you have to get into. Not so with inventors. Inventors have to be flexible about mistakes, kind of sanguine about finding stuff out by accident. So inventors are not all firstborns. There are a lot of people who just like experimenting in there. I remember working with my oldest son on this little puzzle. You've seen it. It's 9 dots in a square. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you have to connect all the dots with a straight line without lifting your pencil from the paper. We struggled for about 7 minutes, which is all the attention span either one of us had for struggling. And we couldn't figure it out. We were getting ready to give up, and the younger son came over and said, what are you doing? We told him, and he went, oh, here. And he picked up the pencil, and he drew a line, and then he went, shockingly, way above the little square of dots, and came back down again, and they were all connected. And we were like, you went outside the box. That wasn't a rule that you had to stay in there. We just pretended, made it up. We made up that there was a rule, that there wasn't really a rule. We just didn't think about it. This congregation is vigorously living our mission. We're trying to figure out whether we want to be a sanctuary church or whether we want to be a church that occasionally does sanctuary and has a refugee living here, or whether we want to be a church that maybe accompanies refugees to their appointments to try to strengthen their case enough so that they don't have to leave their family and their home in order to come to the church to be in sanctuary. We are not sure, and there are no best practices because nobody else is doing this almost. We're almost the only ones doing this. Our sister church, St. Andrew's Presbyterian, is doing it now. So together, we have to figure it out. And we might make a mistake. And when we make a mistake, we're going to go, we made a mistake. This isn't working. Let's try something else. We're moving forward on a plan for building renovation and expansion. We're using the best expertise that we know how to get. We hired great experts out of Washington, D.C. for our fundraising, and we raised at the tippy top of the range that churches can raise. 5 times annual giving. You all did it. And so now we have this budget, which is constrained, and we have these architects, and we're trying to make our dream happen with limited money. Are we going to spend all the money just perfectly? We're going to try. Might we make a mistake? You bet. Just look forward to it. Anytime you are together with other people trying to do something, you're going to make mistakes. And it has to be okay. There has to be room in most processes for making a mistake. If you're a medical person, there's a lot less room for making mistakes, and I'm sorry about that. But as soon as you get home, you can make mistakes. In our house, we say to each other, we're allowed 4 mistakes a day. That the other person sees. So what do you do when you make a mistake? You say, that was a mistake. You look at how much of the responsibility of making the mistake was yours. Err on the side of it being too much yours, because you're the only person you can do anything about. And so you say, I'm sorry. You try to heal that part of yourself that led to the mistake. You try to become better in here, because whatever's in here is going to come out. So we don't just try to watch what we say so we don't say anything hurtful. You have to watch way before that. You know what I mean? You have to become the kind of person who is non-harming in their speech to other people. It's a little bit harder than just watching what you say. I read this week about a prayer called the Ho'oponopono prayer, done in Hawaii by a psychiatrist. Anyway, most of his story I don't believe, but I love the prayer that he came up with, which is, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. A lot of times we have to say that to ourselves, because a lot of the mistakes we make just damage us. And so you can just put your hand on your heart and say, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. So the beauty of working with yourself on a thought level, on a love level, is you don't need to watch what you say. You can make mistakes. You can be around people who might make you uncomfortable because you're worried that you might say something wrong. We like to be perfectly correct in how we deal with people who are unfamiliar to us. But a lot of times, if you're actually around people of different culture or different gender identification or different sexual orientation or something, you're going to say something like, Happy Cinco de Mayo, I'm eating a taco bowl, I love Hispanics. And then you just have to say, I'm sorry. So go ahead and put yourself in situations where you might say something wrong and someone might have to call you back into correct relationship and healthy relationship. It's okay. You're going to make mistakes. I had a dear friend who she used a wheelchair, and she was fierce. She never let anything go by. And I said, Helen, I'm terrified to talk to you because I'm going to say something wrong. And she said, yes, you will. She said, but it's okay. I will tell you about it, and you'll say I'm sorry, and you'll learn something, and I'll forgive you. Oh, that was relaxing. And so I want to say, for the mistakes I've made with you all, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Thank you. I love you.